Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And as always, I have found a fantastic guest to be on the show today. His name is James Heppner. He is a business and life coach, founder of the Weekly Wins and Losses podcast and weekly community call. He helps his clients embrace all aspects of life, both the wins and losses equally, by helping them establish the mental and physical courage they need to leverage the good news that lies at the heart of both a win and a loss. James likes to think of himself as an artist of experience, and his passion is to create transformational experiences for himself and others as a way to explore what it means to be fully alive. James, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Cheryl.
I have been looking forward to this for a very long time because we did connect quite a long time ago.
It's been some time. Absolutely. I've been following your work and I love some of the stuff you put out. It's just, I haven't had a chance to listen to all of it, but some of the stuff I've tapped in, it's fantastic. So thank
Oh,
you for
thank
showing
you.
up and just being there for people. I love that.
Oh, thank you so much. I guess that's the ninja in me that, learned that little trick along the way. So tell us, go ahead and just share your story. I know that with such a transformational change and what you're doing, there's usually the backstory is not pretty. So just go ahead and share your story with us.
Yeah, no, when you say backstory isn't pretty, it's true. It's true for all of us. And I was no exception to that rule. And, I can be thankful for that backstory. And the backstory led me to where I am today. I'll say it like this. I have an unshakable love with life. And why? Yes, I just love that I get to participate with what's directly in front of me because it wasn't always like that. I didn't always love to participate what was directly in front of me. As a matter of fact, I tried to eliminate what was going on. I tried to eliminate some of the tensions, some of the strains, and I'll just take you way back. It was about 13 years ago. This was just prior to 2008, the housing crisis. And I was in the real estate sector and had been married at that time for roughly 8 years. And we had our second baby coming up. And but I'll never forget, I walked to the mail that day. It was just after 2008, whenever the housing crisis came about. And I was again in that real estate place. And we had land development companies, we had custom home building companies. And so, of course, the phone stopped ringing. And so we're having to retool and be like, what do we do? Right. And so I walked to the mail and I pulled a little brown envelope and it was it was specially addressed to me and I was hand selected. We were hand selected for an audit and we're like, well, that's just fantastic timing. So they did this audit, they came back and they said, unfortunately, you've been a really good citizen and blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, you owe us whatever it was. It was several $100,000. I had the money, but I didn't want to give the government the money, right? And they said we owed because we'd sold a few houses to ourselves for less than market value. So there again, I had the money, but I didn't want. So what do we do typically? Well, we resist. And that resistance really just started adding up and accumulating, and a story began to develop. Like this really sucks. Perhaps this whole real estate thing, what I created, perhaps I'm a fallacy, perhaps I'm a fluke, perhaps I can't do this again. Maybe this is the end. So the meanings we give anything, gosh, that determines our future. And so I held back, I fought. And sooner or later, it was our anniversary, and I went to my accountant's office, and he facilitated a call with the government, and we had a little talk, and it cost me near $1,000 for a short 15-minute conversation, somebody on the inside, to determine if I had a chance to fight this. And anyway, my accountant looks at me and says, the news, it's not, if you want to go ahead and do it, it's you go ahead, but the probability is low. And so I just ended up paying. And I remember walking out of the office that day and thinking, to the point of what you focus on tends to happen. I remember thinking, it's our anniversary. I want to take Meg out on a beautiful little date. But in some way, I feel like perhaps my future, that financial future, that me being the provider, we kind of have a bit of a traditional relationship in that way. I normally bring home the bacon and she kind of attends to the kids. That's what she prefers to do. And so it works out for us, right? And anyway, so I walked out thinking, this is just horrible. Again, I paid. And I basically, from that point forward, just fast track, and not to make the story too long, but I checked out of life.
Mm,
Something invited me to check in and to tap in and to participate. Because what's most needed? Gosh, I feel embarrassed. Like,
mm,
I removed myself from the existence of our family. I basically found a way to successfully, and I'm like, this is a horrible stat, but I found a
mhm.
way to sleep 18 hours a day for 2.5 years. And I
Wow.
overdosed on gravel, on melatonin. I just gobbled like hands full of melatonins and gravel because I didn't want to like take care of myself, like end my life, but I didn't want
Mhm,
to be here. So the ultimate way of numbing for me was just like sedating myself.
mhm,
And there were days that I'd said I was going to the office, and so we lived in a small little community in central Canada, directly above North Dakota. And so, as a rural area, of course, we lived in a town. But when I drive to the office, it was just located about 2 miles out of town. That's where our construction site was, where all our houses were being built. And so, if
mhm,
I'd say I go to work, I take the car, and my wife would be like, "Oh, good, he's going to work today. This is really nice." And typically, I didn't. Like most weeks, I didn't go anywhere. I just stayed in the bedroom all day. The kids didn't see me, nothing. But anyway, I get in the car and I'd head out of town, but I'd find a little back road or a little farm path or something and abandoned, and I'd just drive to the end of the strip basically and just look around. If nobody was around, I'd park the car, I'd get in the back seat, I'd grab a blanket, and I'd overdose on melatonin and gravel all over again. So even though I spent 18 hours in the bedroom, when I was awake, I would still try to be checking out, right? And so
mhm,
fast forward, we went to this Tony Robbins event back in 2011, and it was getting pretty horrible for me. And to the point where I hadn't really seen my family for 2.5 years. Friends were still around me. They still wanted to be with me. And it was just, I felt like it was too much. And what I was doing continuously is I was wrestling with tension and I was thinking and contemplating what was wrong with me. I was thinking about how could I get rid of all these thoughts,
mhm,
instead of taking it for the gain that perhaps it could be and discovering and just participating with it, moving with it,
mhm,
blaming and shaming myself and thinking that I was getting further along. And then, of course, when we go to this Tony Robbins event, just prior to going, I remember thinking, I have to do something drastically different because if I keep going, this isn't changing. Like, I've made no progress, it's been two and a half
mhm,
years. And so I go to this event, and it's a date with destiny. And whoever's been to these events, it's a pretty lengthy experience. It's a 6-day event, whatever it ends up being. And you don't sleep much. If you get to sleep 2, 3, 4 hours a night, you're lucky. Remember, I was used to sleeping 18 hours at the time. So
mhm,
this is a stretch for me. It's day 4. It's relationship day. And my wife wakes up, and Meg, my precious Meg, I've been with her for 27 years. I love her to bits. But she says to me, "Hey, baby, this is a really, really great day." I said, "How so?" And she goes, "Well, it's relationship day. We get to go down and we get to just learn about relationships and different things about our relationship." And I said, "Oh man, you know what? Like, I haven't really slept a lot. Like, I think I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I think I'm just gonna like rest for a little bit." And she looks at me like she'd done the whole time while gone through my
mhm,
journey. She goes, "Oh, okay. Like, are you gonna be okay?" And so she just checked in with me and empathized with where I was in my pain. But what was interesting is she did something phenomenal that day. Instead of just empathizing with my pain, she chose to also move forward and empathize with the opportunity. Because while she was moving about in the room, she said, "Baby, you can stay here if you like. It'd really mean the world to me if you came down. But if you don't want, it's no big deal. Just let you know I'll be downstairs. And if you come down, just let me know."
mhm,
And so she got ready and she left. And I heard the door close. And what did I do? Like, this is horrible. But I thought to myself, this is fantastic. I get to just check out. So I go to the curtain that's covered, that's by the window, by the hotel window. And I grab both ends. And I remember just feeling that fabric in my hand going, oh, finally, I get to do what I always do, make it all dark. So I took both ends and just pulled them together. And I take um, a hanger, and I clipped the things together so it'd be nice and tight. Pushed a chair up against the blind so it'd black out perfectly. Hopped into bed, covered myself, and been like, "Oh, this is so nice." I'm thinking to myself for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds. And then
mhm,
I thought, what the hell are you doing? She's been taking care of the kids, taking care of life for
mhm,
2 and 3/4 years, and she's asking you to come down for one day and you can't do it. Like, what are you doing? And I
mhm,
remember thinking, you know, I got to do something different than what I'm
mhm,
doing here. Like, why did I come to this? So I jumped out of bed, and I hardly got dressed. Like I never forget. I just zipped down the stairs. I didn't even take the elevator. And just before I entered the room, I remember checking on myself, going, "Shit, am I dressed? I'm wearing my pants, but I hadn't really done my hair. It was all a mess." But this event, it's just everybody just shows up, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. People share, and people are open. So I open the door and I peek in, and Tony Robbins at the very front of the room, and he's doing an intervention with somebody who has depression.
Mm-hmm.
And all I hear him saying is, "Depression is the most selfish thing in the world." Now, here's the thing. He continues forward, and while he's doing all of this, the pressure builds. And what do we do with pressure typically? We're like, pressure is too much. The only thing is, as you can hear in my story in a very little bit, pressure is actually what we want, because pressure brings us more presence. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
that pressure did is it really focused on what's going on inside of me. And I remember thinking, why wouldn't he be more sensible or sensitive? Like, if he knew what I was going through, he wouldn't be saying this.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about, you don't do depression, or you don't get depression typically. He goes, you can get depression. It is a medical thing. But he
Mm-hmm.
goes, for most people, it isn't something you get. It's something you do. And he goes, watch this. And he talks to the person. I'm like looking for my group, looking for Team Purple. They're wearing purple headbands. I'm looking for Team Purple coming up along the backside. And then he comes walking down, not directly in my aisle, but just one aisle over, but
Mm-hmm.
towards me. And you know how it is when you're at an event and somebody talks, the speaker's talking, and you feel like, oh, this is for me. You know what I mean? Of course, it's for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, it just feels like, whoa, does he know? Does this speaker know? And so he's talking about how selfish it was, how you're just focused on your own needs, you're not focused on the greater good. And he's just laying things in. And I remember just feeling like my world was like there's coals on either side and they're pressurizing me. And I'm going, dang it, I got to get out of here, but no, I got to stay here. Where's Team Purple? So I find Team Purple, and he is just going hard at it and giving more and more and more ammo. And so I sit my ass down and I'm sitting, and then all of a sudden, he says, "Now get up." And you know how these events are just like, okay, now jump up and now share with your partner, and just be open and share what your worst memory is, what your most excited thought is right now. And so all of these emotions, like it's really emotional entrainment is what's going on. And of course, I've been there for the other 3 days, and I was kind of okay with doing it, though I was really sheepish because I wasn't feeling good at all. So I'm like, yeah, half participating. But what he talked about depression rocked me so much, I stayed my ass in the chair. I didn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my partner and the group, they're all in one big group. They walked over and they said, "Hey, listen, would you want to join us? Like, just feel free to join, like, just come and join us." And I said, "Nope." And I remember thinking in that moment, wait a minute, he says depression is something you do typically, it's not what you get.
Mm-hmm.
While I was sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling like the whole world was moving on and I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, this song comes through the speakers. It's Flowers of the Forest. That's what the song is called.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a song with a bagpipe going on. And I remember just started weeping. And they say that if the shell of the ego cracks once properly, it never has to crack like that again. When you break properly once.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all I did is I just stood up and I walked to my group. And it's like my group hardly even noticed that anything was going on that they weren't experiencing. I was finally just showing the emotion that we were all invited to share and all participate with.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day that my life changed. And from that point forward, where I live now. And so that's my story. I'm not in that story anymore. But like I say, from that point forward, gratitude has been my gift. I have been through way more intense strain than that.
Mm-hmm.
But people come to find me when they want to stop the self-sabotage, when they
Mm-hmm.
want to raise the standards, and they want to participate with unshakable confidence. So what does that take? In my opinion, it takes that we begin to utilize, not eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about overcoming, we don't overcome in spite of, we overcome because of. Because an overcomer, in my opinion, is not one that says, listen, when something is rough, I just want to say, I crushed that. I got beyond that. If we do that, the next time that happens, we won't know what to do with it because you'll be like, oh, here it is again. Instead of us being, oh, look what I get to participate with. Why not be present to where we're currently at? And so my life's work, I'm sorry for this long rant,
No,
but
keep
my life's
going.
work is all about, and I love taking certain words and finding little things that I can track with in my brain properly. So listeners, if this helps you, I know for me it really helped, but there's a simple thing about pain and suffering. If you think about your car, if your engine light is flashing, it's inviting you to do something. Maybe pull over, pop the hood, have a little look. It's not asking you to be like completely anxious and overwhelmed and afraid of the fear. You're feeling fear, so just go and explore it. It's asking you to participate with it. So I have an acronym for pain, and the acronym is please accept inner nudgings. Accept the inner nudgings, because if you don't, which I did not, you will go into suffering. So if you don't investigate why the light's going on, your engine may blow, and now you got a big issue. That's a long-term issue, right? And so if you can utilize pain properly, meaning just accept the inner nudgings, what is it inviting you to have a look at? It's the Buddhists have a beautiful thing. It's 2 arrows. The first arrow is reality of life. That happens to all of us. Reality of life, life comes at us. That's the good news. That's life. It's beautiful. It is what it is. The tree falls, the tree lives. What is it? I don't know. It is what it is. But that's the first arrow. But the Buddhists always say we have a choice if we engage in the second arrow. And the second arrow is where we take the arrow and we pierce ourselves. And we pierce ourselves and we shame ourselves and we make the story bigger. We let something grow beyond. And if we don't please accept inner nudgings, it will grow and we inflict upon ourselves the second arrow. And so if we use pain well, if we do that well, then we have an opportunity to maximize our life. And here's how. The more pressure you feel in life, think about it. It invites us to be present. The more pressure, the more presence you have. Who doesn't want to be present? When you're present, you begin to spot things. And the more present you are, the more peace begins to unfold. When you're present with you, it's okay. You just be like, wow, I feel so much. It feels strange. It feels different. But actually, I'm realizing I do have the capacity to handle just feeling these things. I don't have to do anything with them. I just get to observe them. Pressure equals presence. Presence equals peace. And gosh, what can we do when we're present and even have a bit of peace in our life? Just a little bit of like silence, the power of the pause. All of a sudden, we begin to feel a little bit of purpose erupting because it's still. We begin to see. And when the purpose comes, our passion alivens. And this is how we liberate ourselves. But we've got to do something about pain. This is why weekly wins and losses, I talk about wins are super good. But here's the thing, if we don't utilize losses, like a lot of people that find me, most of them, and by the way, majority of them are already successful, but they come to find me because with how they're currently working with losses, it just no longer works. It's no longer, and they're realizing they're leaving a whole bunch of life on the table. And once you get a little bit advanced in life, when you've experienced a few things, you begin to realize that the goodness of all of life, the acres of diamonds, whatever you want to call it, isn't out there. It's to be found in here. Your inner authority is in here. And what is here? It's the inevitability of what you're going to experience. And here's what the human being always experiences. Before it ever goes into thriving, it must feel safe in your survival mode. And what's a survival? It perceives that life is either a win or a loss. That's just how it is. And the inevitability, listeners, think about this. When is it that anything you have walked towards, whether it's marriage, whether it's business opportunity, whether I don't know what it is, has it ever completed, or has it ever turned out exactly the way you thought? The answer is no, it never does. So because it never does, the inevitability is we have to do something different than always be judging. Is it win or is it lose? We gotta engage in the gray, right in the middle of it all. We need to utilize it. You see, when I was going through I call it my story, part one of my story. I don't live in part two. I don't live in part one. But that journey, that story, I was trying to eliminate. I wasn't trying to use. I wasn't please accepting inner nudgings. I was trying to just avoid it. Just get through it. I want to thrive. No, slow it down. Begin to utilize. Yeah, you feel like you lost something. Actually, you're right. The economy did crash. You're right.
Mhm.
I lost a couple 100,000. Yes, there is less there now. That's true. But I think at the heart of the good is when we let reality serve us the good news. Why is it
Mhm.
that when reality shows up, we're like, well, that really stinks? You know what? Reality doesn't care. Reality says, I love you too much to care.
Mhm.
I just want you to harmonize around me. So,
Mhm. Well, I have a few things to say. First of all, I think Meg is brilliant.
mm, mhm,
You know, she did exactly what the right things and exactly what needed to be done to get your butt out of that bed and running down the stairs, even if you weren't fully dressed and groomed. The other
mhm,
thing is, for those 2.5 years that
mhm,
you kind of were sleeping through, literally and figuratively, I
mhm,
mean, how did you survive financially? And did Meg know? Of course, I mean, you probably weren't bringing in much income. How did you guys survive as a family?
mhm, mhm. We had, let's say it like this. I had put away a whole, but we, prior to 2008, we become very successful. So
Mhm.
we had, so we built new houses. So we were currently, when I was going through my story, we were living in a brand new house. I put away a whole bunch of money. And so we survived because of living debt. We basically lived down some of the monies that we saved up. But it
Mhm.
did get to the point because we had a lot of outgoing funds required. A lot of,
Mhm.
we had staff, different things. How do we survive it? That's a fascinating question because it actually, if I be completely honest, it got to the point where, and I would normally attend, like I said, to the financial. She could have too, but it was just kind of how we sorted our life. Like
Mhm.
she didn't really care for the money, and I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I
Mhm.
took care of the car, she took care of the house. That's kind of how it worked in our relationship, and still does to a large degree.
Mhm.
But she also became aware of just where her financials were at.
Mhm.
I'll never forget the one day she comes into the bedroom and she goes, "Hey James, I got a brilliant idea." I says, "What's that?" And she goes, "Well, I can't really get a job." And I'm thinking, and I remember thinking to myself, "Oh Lord, like get a job? Like I take care. What are you thinking?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Yeah, we have Harrison. Harrison was already born at the time. He had high functioning autism." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "We can't just bring Harrison anywhere." And she goes, "Well, that's the thing." So I'm thinking, in order for me to generate income, why don't I just do some childcare? And I'm thinking, what?
Mhm.
Like, what's the bizarre thing is if ever in life we think we are beyond certain work, we're
Mhm.
in trouble. And so
Mhm.
my need for significance was way too high. Like the community had come to know us as entrepreneurs. Prior to us launching business, my dad was a pastor of a mega church. The spiritual community knew about us completely. Like I was like a famous person in our community because of my dad. Okay.
Mhm.
But I'll say this, in the business community, I was an unknown until I launched my business. And I went from zero to like having a whole bunch of houses on our lot and doing land. And it was just
Wow.
incredible. People were like, whoa, who is this guy?
Mhm.
So unfortunately, I think that must have really started affecting my ego. And I started buying into the fact. And we were raised to work hard. And so why I ever thought I was beyond any work makes no sense. But I
Mhm.
think I was kind of rising in the status hierarchy. You see the problem.
Mhm.
Okay. So when she said, I'll take care of kids, I'm like, whoa. But I said, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, but we've built this place. People come to know us as these financial affluent people, and you're going to take care of other people's kids?
Mhm.
And even in a moment like that, I think that was like after about 2 years. And so she took care of kids for about three-quarter of a year before I snapped out of it. And I started,
Mhm.
making funds and whatever the heck is that I was doing again. But I'll
Mhm.
never forget, I remember she followed through and then the doorbell started ringing and people started dropping their kids off. And it's like, even it's the strangest thing. I cannot imagine what the heck was going on inside of me, how resistant I was to accepting
Mhm.
reality. I still in that moment, I remember going, well, it's getting pretty hot in my brain and my heart, all these things. And
Mhm.
I'm seeing she's taking care of kids. And so she's doing literally everything, and I'm doing nothing.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, of course, I can't utilize shame, but
Mhm.
if you be totally honest, just by me sharing the story, it's not a very impact, or it's not a very fun thing for me to have to say because that's
Mhm.
not how I pride myself. I take care of what I do. Anybody who knows me, like the way I checked out, it just wasn't me, right? And so
Mhm.
that's why I say the shell of the ego cracked once
Mhm.
at that moment at Tony Robbins, and I came back and I've never been the same.
Mhm.
I've always been a ferocious participant, but
Mhm.
how easy isn't it to participate when life is going well?
So that brings me to another question
Please.
is how did people react to the new you? Or was it not even that obvious because you were such a master at hiding, your secret
Mm,
life of just sleeping your life away? But obviously, since you launched this coaching business and your
mhm, mhm,
enthusiasm is pretty
mm,
much contagious,
mm,
that people around you, even just the local community, must have seen or sensed a change in you.
mhm. Yeah, I think, I never thought I'd find myself in this work, but it makes sense that I did because,
Mhm.
I was raised in a home where missional work was the most important.
Mhm.
Like I said, my dad was, this pastor of this mega church, so that's how I was raised. And I remember thinking, well, he did that. Well, no, I don't have to do that part of life. I can just go make money. And so when I popped out of my story, I'll never forget how the way that I viewed the world just changed completely. The things that once gave me joy, like brand new cars, or brand new
Mhm.
houses, or taking luxury trips, or all these things, just lost their meaning. Now, I kind of enjoyed them, but it was kind of empty for me. I'm like, yeah, this isn't really doing much for me.
Mhm.
Right? And so some people say, well, that's interesting that you found the industry, like the personal development industry. And I say,
Mhm.
actually, I think the industry found me. Like I had
Mhm.
need of it. And I realized all of what I actually always wanted in life was found within inside of me.
Mhm.
It wasn't anywhere else. And so, I think one of the things that I'm about currently is I love this space so much because it set me free and I know the power
Mhm.
of it and I know just how trapped I was. And so getting to your question about how did people respond? A lot of people didn't know because I just checked out and my staff were just informed not to really share stuff and whatever.
Mhm.
My friends and
Mhm.
family all knew.
Mhm.
And let's say it like this, I think a lot of people were the people that knew about it were so shocked, and here's how. When I came out of my story, I wasn't one of these people who was like, yeah, well, because Harrison was born and because of the financial crisis, I didn't blame. What I said is, you know what? To be totally honest, I was totally selfish. And people were I remember we were in this group of friends and I was just sharing. So they're going, welcome back, James. Heppner's back, they were saying, and they're asking me questions. And I said, you know what? I'm kind of a different person. And I was just sharing, and I've always been really open. Like I've always been
Mhm.
like that, but I kind of hide though from certain aspects. And all of a sudden I just went straight forward. And I said, oh my goodness, like I'm just barely out of this. And I can't believe I'm saying this already. But I said, completely honest, like I was just thinking about myself. And so nothing that I was sharing had anything to do with external circumstances. It was all of what I had contributed and not
Mhm.
basically followed through on.
Mhm.
And I remember I own my life so deeply. If you ask Meg, Meg will say that I was actually very uncomfortable for her because she had kind of adopted the belief that she would have to take care of her family.
Oh.
And I just came back and I just started owning every piece of my
Mhm.
responsibility. And she was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I just got settled into doing this. And I said,
Mhm.
no, that's mine to do. That's mine to do. You don't have to do that. You focus on this, whatever. Like I'm not a controller,
Mhm.
but I'm like, you get back to your life and I'm going to do my
Mhm.
life. And it was actually hard for her. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for some people, I'm a pretty extreme individual. And when I discover something, I'm just kind of in it, right? So
Sorry for laughing about that. I'm sorry.
well, perhaps
That was just spontaneous. It just spurted out of me.
well,
Because
perhaps perhaps what I said kind of makes you think that you're also kind of an extreme person. If I look at your book, Ninja, and at 47, whatever you said, that's pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've done some really strange things. And sometimes I step back and go, who was that? Who did that? Was that really me? And, how did I find the courage? But you know what? Everybody's got that courage deep down
Mm,
inside of us.
mhm,
And that's exactly what you do is help people find that mental and physical courage. Before we go into that and start talking about that, I just want to highlight something you were talking about as far as joy was concerned,
mhm,
because I pulled this one quote out of your profile that
mm,
just it really hit me. And that
mm,
was, you said, my joy is not for sale.
mm.
And to me, that was pretty profound.
It Every time I hear it, every time I say it, it brings tears to my eyes because
Mhm.
when I came through my story, all I remember saying is, I got to make some new decisions.
Mm.
And you know what I realized? I realized that I had let something control my joy. I
Mhm.
sold my joy because I had less money. And I said, never again, ever again.
You
And to be
sold your joy because you had less money, but you still had enough to survive and enough to live a
exactly.
decent life.
And so the joy that I had bought earlier, sold my joy to for all those years,
Mhm.
was thinking that I was someone or I was valuable or I was needed or I was beneficial to the earth if I brought external resource in. And you know what I realized? Though that's nice, paying the groceries is nice.
Mhm.
My wife didn't leave me, my kids didn't leave me, my businesses, my
Mhm.
joy was a decision.
Mhm.
Never again have I let, and we have gone through financial upheaval a couple of times, well in excess to those couple 100,000, like quote
Mhm.
unquote losing money. I've lost millions of dollars since then,
Mhm.
millions, but it hasn't changed not anything more than 5 minutes of a day of my life
Mm.
because
Nice.
because of that decision.
Mhm. So I'm curious, do you still have that same business as well as your coaching business?
That business we sold off, but we kind of
Mhm.
morphed that into a land development company here on the West Coast. So currently we live in Vancouver,
Mhm.
and so that company, Jada Homes, currently just morphed into all we do now is we strategically buy oceanfront property. And so we're investors. So that's kind of what we do within that
Mhm.
realm. But all of my available energies and time go towards my work, walking the
Mhm.
journey, like I say, helping people stop that self-sabotage, raise
Mm.
their standards, and participate with unshakable confidence. That's what we do constant, and that's all I do. I mean, I go and see my tax attorney once a year, and I
Mhm.
fill out the forms for the investments. But other than that, my libidinal energy, all of what I've got, goes
Mhm.
towards this work. I love it.
Okay, so then this is a nice segue into something that we were talking about actually before we started recording, and that was getting out of our comfort zone.
Mm, mm,
So take it
mhm.
away.
Take it away. Well, you were sharing a bit of a story. I'm sure your listeners already know, but someone told you that he saw potential in you to be this ninja person, you know? And you know, what I think is so interesting about, and how did you ask the question? Just ask it again. I just want to make sure I answer just directly.
Well, just the power, let's just
Mm,
say this, the power of getting out of our comfort zone,
mhm,
and how many times we might have that opportunity in front of us. For example, you
mhm,
referenced me being the ninja. My
mhm,
sensei, Mark, had
mhm,
actually presented this, hey, come train with me.
mhm,
But it took him 3 years to convince me to get on the mat because I kept
mhm,
saying no.
mhm,
And I
mhm,
just kept resisting because, again, there's that word resistance. I knew because I knew I was going to hate it. I
mhm,
knew it wasn't going to help me heal from this traumatic event that was the,
mhm, mhm,
precipice for all of this. And I just really didn't see how hanging out in a smelly dojo with a bunch of sweaty men was going to make me feel better and make me heal. So
mhm.
I just kept saying no. And it wasn't that Mark saw me as this incredible person who's going to be this wonderful ninja. He just really felt bad for me and he was trying to help me
Mm,
get my life back together. And
mhm,
so, you know, it's really a toss up to say which one of us was more stubborn, but he never gave up
mm,
until he finally broke me down and I said, okay,
mm,
I'll take a few classes and then I'll quit. But I was so far out of my comfort zone.
mm, mhm,
For the first few years, actually, I was the only woman in class.
mm.
And I never expected to go longer than, maybe a month or two. I'll take a few classes, then I'm out of here. And look at what happened. If I hadn't taken that step so far out of my comfort zone, I shudder to think of where I might be
Mhm.
now.
Gosh, you know what? What comes alive for me, that story, by the way, that story is incredible.
Thanks.
What comes to heart for me is the wonderful, is just amazing grace that comes when we need it most. And what I mean to
Yes.
say is the grace of delivering us discomfort.
Hmm.
Somebody nudged you towards something and it was uncomfortable. What is grace? Grace is all the things we actually need and want. But if we're not careful, if we just choose what we have preference for, then we end up with selective gratitude.
Hmm.
And selective gratitude leads to misery and suffering,
Hmm.
because then you're not harmonizing with nature. And you're saying,
Hmm.
yeah, I like nature and I like what's going on, but these specific things I don't. Ask yourself, does nature care if you do that again? It doesn't care. Nature says your best work will happen when you harmonize around what's currently happening, when you can find a way to harmonize. And that isn't to say that if something needs to be altered or worked on, that you can't get at it and work through it. But the thing is, if you resist, if you spill a cup of milk and you resist the fact that it's happening and you try to go backwards, it's not going to help you anything. The helpful thing is to be like, oh, okay, that happened. What do we do now?
Hmm.
You're always wanting to put yourself into a participation zone. Okay. When you think about grace, when you think about what grace delivers, what we need and what we want, it brings us to like the root of all living.
Hmm.
You know, when I think about moving beyond comfort zones, how do we build, like I said earlier, I help people, a few things, but participate with unshakable confidence. How do you build confidence? Confidence is simply self-respect. That's following through with doing difficult things and saying, listen, I survived. Like the people that I work with, all of my people all have a secret fear. And this is what it is. I've stress tested this on all of them.
Hmm.
And I go through 5 of them and I say, which fear stands out most? And this is the one they come back to each and every time. And here's how it goes. Secretly being afraid that we won't have the capacity to handle a worst case scenario.
Hmm.
That's why typically we don't take strong, bold, innovative action towards
Hmm.
our goals, because we fear the evidence that will come, the evidence that will develop. If I ask the girl out, if I do the business and it doesn't churn out the way that I thought, evidence will appear and I fear I won't have the capacity to handle it.
Hmm.
Right. And so when I think about when we action these things, when we finally go through with, when grace shows up and it nudges us. So the first level that I typically discover in life, and it sounds to me like you kind of walk the journey. It's like grace comes like from an outside source. You realize somebody goes, hey, 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 and they nut tap you.
Hmm.
But then if we're wise, we realize that grace is happening not just when exteriors are tapping us, but it's when we feel something on the inside. And instead of pushing that feeling out, listen, all emotions are safe. Emotions are just primed, or
Hmm.
sorry, emotions are just there to prime us to take next proper action. That's all they're there to do. And so when we feel something, it's all there to just go like, oh, how would I want to participate with this in a
Hmm.
beneficial way? That's what it's
Hmm.
really there for. So confidence comes when we do difficult things, when we
Hmm.
step beyond our comforts. And actually, when people say the uncomfortable zone, I would say it's the respect zone.
That's
And
great.
respect, the self-respect zone, is where we build confidence. And so really what we want, people often go, well, I have preference for the comfortable things. I said, yeah, me too. I say preference for anything else. Well, no. And that's the typical problem in Western society. It's like
Hmm.
this dualist thing. Like I have to choose this or that. One choice, one option is no option. Two option is not a good one. The third, when you bring more things in. And so here's the thing. When you think about the ultimate, ultimate solution in life is to get real with what you really want. And here's what we all want. I'm just going to lay it in.
Hmm.
We actually want comfort and discomforts, because
Hmm.
it goes a bit like this. If you only receive comforts, it's hell. And here's a story for you. Yeah, yeah, I'm okay if I share a story. Is that okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's what we're here for. I
Yeah.
love
Okay.
stories.
Okay. So there's this guy by the name of Pip. This is just a story. Okay. It's a story,
Okay.
but just follow along if you like. There's this guy named Pip, and he likes the good life, right? And so, success isn't coming fast enough. So he decides he's going to go out on a bit of a journey. And so he joins a gang, and of course he starts, selling drugs, but he always has this nudge inside of him that before it gets really nasty, like if the bullets start flying his way, he needs to make sure he makes his life right. He doesn't know really what that means, but he just got to like maybe ask people that he hurt forgiveness or whatever. He just got to like
Hmm.
change his life. And so the one day, just going about his day, and all of a sudden he realizes, oh crap, this is really happening. Like bullets are flying and they're getting close to me. And he's like, I better do something. And all of a sudden it's black. And all of a sudden he looks around, he becomes aware there's this person standing beside him dressed in like these white robes. He's like, oh. And he thinks, oh crap, I think I'm on the other side. And he goes, you know what? I always told myself if I ever am here and I didn't ask for forgiveness or whatever that is and didn't make things right with people, that I'm just gonna like ask the person who's there before they throw me into, if there is a hell or if there is a heaven, if there is like that, I'm gonna ask them to like, hey, you know what? Can I just have another chance? Like, let me just make it right with you. Anyway, so but this person looks at the person and this person's smiling, just really a jovial person. He goes, you know what? I'm actually a really good manipulator. I've never really got caught. You never know. Maybe this person doesn't know who I really am. So they just go for a walk, and so he ends up realizing, yeah, this is an angel. And he goes, okay, he starts making a deal with himself. If we walk past this golden gate or whatever the case is, if we walk past it, I'm gonna say, whoa, hang on a sec, because you realize I'm going to the wrong place. And then I'm gonna fess up with who I really am. Anyway, so they go for a walk, and then they see this city on a hill. It's just shining, it's beautiful. And we're getting closer, and he's like, oh, this is incredible. And he goes, just remember, Pip, he goes, remember, if we walk past the gate, I got to make sure that I like then take the opportunity before I get thrown into like everlasting hell, if there is that thing, right? And so they get to this gate, and sure enough, they don't walk past, they walk through. And he's going, oh, smokes. And everything is just beautiful. Like people are dancing in the street, and it's lovely. And he looks over at the angel, and the angel's smiling. He goes, shit, pardon the language, but I think they got the wrong person, but I'm not saying anything because I found my. It's awesome. Anyway, so the angel says, gives him a little card and says, listen, you get to stay here forever. And Pip goes, me forever. And on the card is the angel's contact number. And the angel says, if you ever need me, just call me. And Pip goes, oh, okay, sure, fine. He goes, I'll never call this person, but he puts the card in the pocket just to be respectful because he's snuck in, so why not? And this place is so lovely. Everything he touches goes to gold. He loves gambling and he wins. He cannot lose. There's no matter what he touches, pulls the string. It's like boom, 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 win, 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 blackjack, win. He's constantly winning. And he loves it. This is the most incredible thing. This is what he's dreamt about all his life. This is like euphoric, utopic life. Think about who doesn't want utopia. Most people are shooting for some utopia. They don't want problems. They don't want to like discomfort life. They want to have all the gold, right? Like they think that would be a heavenly experience. Anyway, so he's having this experience. And one day he just kind of sleeps in and he's not really motivated to go down. He like sleeps on the 13th floor. He overlooks this whole area. It's just beautiful. And he's got everything he wants. And he's just bored. He's kind of depressed and kind of bored. That's kind of life. On one side of life is boredom, other side is depression. And in the middle of both lies good life. That's the tension right in the middle. And he just kind of he turns on the TV and Netflix is boring too. And everything's boring. All of a sudden his phone rings and his friend calls from downstairs and goes, hey, Pip, you got to come down. There's a new way of playing blackjack. There's another level of winning. You got to come down and experience this. And he goes, hey, by the way, like I haven't seen you for a couple of days. Like, why aren't you coming down? Pip goes, it's just kind of boring. Whatever I do, I win all the time. Anyway, the friend convinces him. Pip goes downstairs. And sure enough, they enter this chamber, and this is a new level of blackjack. And Pip's like, whoa, the stakes are higher than ever. And he's like, this is incredible. And he goes, perhaps there's some risk here. And what's real life? There's some risk. But he's 5 minutes in, he realizes, crap, there's no risk. It's a setup. I'm going to win again. He gets so pissed. He takes his hands, takes the table, flips it over, and he storms out. And his friend comes to follow him, goes, what's the problem? Pip goes, just leave me alone. I got to call the May. He reaches in his pocket, grabs the card, calls the angel and says, there's got to be a mistake. Angel says, what's the problem? Pip goes, I'm in the wrong place. Angel goes, wait a minute. Where do you think you are? And Pip goes, well, obviously I'm in heaven. Angel goes, you're in hell. You see, if we think that what we want is just to win and just to be comfortable, that's a hellish existence. Because if you don't have a chance of having something happen that's different than what you thought it was, your human spirit dies. You will be very bored and very depressed. You need something to challenge. You need there to be risk. You need there to be the off chance that you can't control the game, because if you control the game, you're God and it's over.
Mm-hmm.
You need there to know, you need to know that there's some other play, that you're just part of something bigger. You need to be a small piece of a big picture. You need this.
That's a great story. That is a
Sure.
great story and a great life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So, James, when you work with people, I mean, you know, how does that look? You know, do you have a specific coaching program? I mean, you know, everybody's different, but you even said a lot of the people that you work with are already very successful.
Well, and I should probably preface it like this, because some people who are hearing this, they're probably asking themselves, well, what does he mean successful? And I hope that people have picked up that my version of success doesn't mean a bank account balance of X. What that means is that they've succeeded to a large degree in life, like they didn't check out, and they maybe checked out for a while, but they're still here. They're still kicking. They're still doing something. Okay. So, truth is, yes, when I say successful people, these are people who basically are saying, hey, listen, I know I get to be here. I know that maybe life isn't always easy, but I'm going to keep at it. 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 Okay. That's what I'm talking about. Now, the truth is also there's a lot of very successful financial people that find me. That's true. You know, there's a lot of like really known people who find me. Right. But the point, I just want to make sure that your listeners don't understand me to say that, for example, if you don't have, 5 million in your bank account or something like that, that you're not a person. I deal with people that are hungry. All that I know is you got to be hungry. And if you're hungry and you're willing to participate, listen, the sky's the limit. And I'm going to nicely take you on a journey that's going to help you to see that there's nothing wasted in this economy. In God's economy, there's nothing wasted. It's all for gain. It's all for gain. It's all for us here right now, if we choose to let it serve us. And this isn't like some, we just playing around thing. This is like, no. If most people that find me come at me in the second half of life, like when life has already thrown you a couple of challenges and there's been a lot of pressure, and oftentimes these challenges coalesce into one situation. And you're like, what do I do now? Listen, that threshold moment, listeners, when you've experienced it, when that moment was, or if it's now, you know what that feels like. You just feel like, wow, I just don't know. I don't know what to do. People normally find me after they've read the books, gone to the seminars. They've done a lot of that work. But listen, something is just beyond knowledge. Something is here now that's inviting them to participate. They just don't freaking know what this means or how to work with it. And so that in essence, I hope that helps you to and your listeners understand that part.
Absolutely. What I really love about that is that you said you gently take them on a journey, because that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Love it. Yeah. Weekly Wins and Losses is really set up to help you embrace both a win and a loss equally. So I think I've talked about it on this podcast already. It is just to utilize both edges of life, and instead of trying to convert a loss into a win, that's what a lot of people do, by the way. They make the mistake of being like, we're going to take something that's going to turn to positive. Listen, a loss was never negative. A loss was just reality. You just saw you got a 50% on your math exam. Okay. You just saw that, you got to raise a 5,000 instead of 10. Okay. It doesn't give you anything more than just, that's what it is. Why not just be like, okay, it's showing me what it actually is, right?
And is that associated with your weekly community call, or is that something different?
That kind of cues people up a little bit. Weekly Wins and Losses just basically cues people up how to be focused on what life actually is, which is the gain. So my people, what I deliver is more gain, less strain. That's just what people want. It's what I help them do. And I show them how you can gain. And again, I'm kind of, repeating myself here, but gaining not just when we perceive we win or we perceive we lose, but when we perceive or when maybe even when we lose. Like, the point is, no matter what it is, even if it's a real honest loss, like my grandpa died, it's a loss. He's not here anymore. It's a loss. How to take that and how to actually let that serve the purpose and let it be the gain that it actually is. And what is it all gain for? Let me share it like this. Listeners, it's all an opportunity for you to gain for appreciation and be more grateful. And it's not changing the facts. Listen, grandpa died. It sucks. He went into a hole. We covered it with dirt. It sucks. Listen, you have the capacity to handle that truth. Don't change it. It sucks. The feeling of it sucks isn't bad. It's a feeling. And if you don't learn how to use it, that emotion will control your life. So feel that it sucks. And then after you feel that it sucks, that emotion is going to prime you to take next proper action. Next proper action always is this. How do I want to participate with it now? We want to be beneficial humans. We don't want to be walking around projecting into the world that we got it all slapped. We got to master. We're conquering stuff. Got beyond that so quickly. Really? That's not helpful. What's helpful is to be truthful. Be like, oh, well, it sucked. Okay. The only thing is, of course, people say, well, if you're truthful, how do you stay truthful and not let it become a story? Well, how you do that, a story meaning like that, it becomes prolonged depression. How you do it is you feel the emotion and you let it just nudge you to be like, oh, I accept it. Now, what do I do with this feeling? Because if you don't do that, if you don't please accept inner nudgings, your dashboard light's going to start not flashing. Your car is going to stall. You're in suffering. Now you got problems. So the most beautiful thing, I think the majority of work that we do, we have an overdeveloped muscle towards the feeling of winning. But think about the story of Pip. It's hell if you just win. You actually want to have the chance that you are going to lose sometimes. If not, the game isn't worth it. The human doesn't respect it. And actually, it's a setup. When we challenge ourselves to do uncomfortable things, and there's an inevitability that's going to turn out a little differently than what we thought, that means there's always going to be a feeling of, oh, didn't quite, like, the perception of loss is always there. And that perception of loss has us go like, what do I do with it now? Well, honestly, self-respect, like we talked about, is when you participate with it. And the setup is it's all an invitation for you to restore yourself back to the authority that you always were. You came from that authority. Listen, what is impossible? What is not possible for someone who has an unshakable confidence? Anything is possible.
True.
Anything.
Excellent. Well, this has been a lot of fun, James. This has been pretty amazing. So where can people find you? Of course, all of your links will be in the show notes, but I do like for the guests to have the opportunity to tell the audience and share with them where they can find you.
Awesome. Well, I'll just say it like this. If you want to stop the self-sabotage and raise your standards and participate with unshakable confidence, you want to have greater gains with less strain, and you'll want to take the Maximize Your Life quiz. And you can find that by going to www.jamesheppner.com/quiz. So again, that's James Heppner, HEPPNER.com/quiz. And by taking this little quiz, you're going to discover exactly where you're making your life unnecessarily difficult and exactly where your behaviors are cutting you off from the outcomes and goals you are craving most. Now, your quiz results, these results will pinpoint with precise accuracy the exact areas to focus on. And I kid you not, exact area. This will immediately activate your ability to use your time and resources effectively, and it'll instantly set you on the path to create higher level gains with less strains. My question to you is this: why not get down to the base and discover the truth about what's controlling your life right now? So I challenge you, take a few minutes. You owe it to yourself. You're worth it, and your experience of life depends on it. Give yourself the gift by honoring yourself and taking 5 minutes to invest in yourself. Just take the Maximize Your Life quiz now at jamesheppner.com/quiz and finally set yourself on the path, that path that you want to be on that will lead you directly to what you want and need most now.
Excellent. Well, James, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being on the show. This has been so much fun. And I have learned an awful lot. And I absolutely love your energy and your enthusiasm. It's just absolutely just magnificent. So thank you so much for being on the show.
It was an honor being here, Cheryl. Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for listening. I always appreciate you as well. And do check out James' website. Do take his quiz. and check out his podcast. And just remember that your joy is not for sale. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.